meaningful legacy of Erwin Smith, the commander of the Survey Corps, the mentor of Levi, and the guy who can lose an arm to a titan and still scream Shinzuo Sasageyo until giant tears of pure manliness are flowing down your face. Erwin was a one-of-a-kind figure in the world of Attack on Titan. No one else can compare to Erwin in terms of leadership skills and the ability to motivate his soldiers to move forward, even in the face of certain death. It is no wonder that even though he was always more of a side character, I've had quite a few people tell me that Erwin is one of their favorites or even their absolute favorite character in the entire series. But the most interesting thing about Erwin is what a nuanced and complex character he is. He is not just a one-dimensional heroic leader of men who stands for truth and justice. He is also a man with big flaws, with a traumatizing childhood, and with an obsessive urge to find out the truth about the world no matter the cost. As noted by Armin and others, Erwin had a very rare ability. He was capable of remaining cold and calculating in the most extreme situations, and he was willing to send hundreds of soldiers to their death in the name of the greater good. In the world of Attack on Titan, change is impossible for those who are not willing to make big sacrifices. And in some ways, Erwin sacrificed his own humanity in the name of saving the rest of humanity from the Titans. Erwin sacrificed the lives of many, including young, inexperienced soldiers, and he often remained cold and ruthless throughout, because he always prioritized the bigger picture and the greater good of humanity. Erwin was an impressive military strategist, and he came up with innovations that required the loss of many lives, such as the suicidal charge that he led against the Beast Titan during the Return to Shiganshina arc. A charge that resulted in scores of dead Survey Corps members just so Levi could sneak up on the Beast Titan and take him out. Erwin's cold and ruthless commitment to the cause of humanity inspired some to refer to him as the human demon, someone who gave up his human emotions and sentiments in order to do what had to be done in the name of ultimate victory. Even though Erwin did feel remorse for all the soldiers that died under his command, he always prioritized the mission, and he was willing to do things to other individuals that normal humans would consider cruel and appalling if that meant advancing the cause of humanity as a whole. Nevertheless, during the Battle of Shiganshina, when both Erwin and Armin were on the brink of death, Levi, who was certainly a lot closer to Erwin than to Armin, ultimately chose to save Armin's life by turning him into a Titan while allowing Erwin to die and rest in peace. In order to understand this decision and the ultimate legacy of Erwin Smith, we have to delve deep into Erwin's tragic past. Erwin was the son of a school teacher, and so it isn't surprising that he was always an inquisitive child. Even at a young age, Erwin understood that the official story about the walls and humanity that the ruling regime was promoting didn't quite add up. Erwin realized that the history books that were being taught to him and the other children were clearly subjective. He often asked his father how the history books could make definitive assertions that could not be confirmed logically. For example, if we know that humans are unable to venture outside the walls, then how can the history books claim that all humans outside the walls had gone extinct? Since humans cannot venture far outside the walls, they cannot confirm that there are no other humans out there somewhere. So the fact that the history books didn't just say something like it is believed that all humans outside the walls had gone extinct, but instead made definitive claims that humans had in fact gone extinct, made Erwin instantly suspicious. He realized that these unverifiable claims were being presented as fact for some specific political purpose. Since his father was a teacher, Erwin shared his misgivings about the history books with his father. Erwin wondered why humanity had no recollection of the world outside the walls. Even if all records of the outside world were somehow lost, shouldn't some information about it still have been preserved through word of mouth, meaning that older generations could still have told the truth about the outside world to their children, grandchildren, and so on? Erwin's father had a theory that the king had somehow managed to alter the memories of humanity once they had moved behind the walls, because this made it easier for the king to control them and keep them in line. The young Erwin was fascinated by this idea, and he couldn't understand why his father and other teachers were not talking about this in the classroom. After all, the purpose of classrooms was to teach the truth, and yet the truth was being deliberately glossed over and hidden from the students. Since he was still young and not fully aware of the consequences of his actions, Erwin began discussing his views about the truth and how it was being covered up by the government with other children. Unfortunately, word about Erwin's questions and theories reached the wrong people, and one day Erwin's father met a tragic end. Although his death was officially labeled an accident, Erwin's father was killed by the Military Police Brigade's 1st Interior Squad. The 1st Interior Squad is basically a secret police that functions independently from the Military Police Brigade and ensures that the order that the king has established behind the walls is preserved at all costs, even if that means eliminating everyone who gets too curious about the outside world. The Interior Squad was responsible for the death of Armin's parents after they attempted to fly beyond the walls in a hot air balloon. They were responsible for the death of Erwin's father. And they were also responsible for who knows how many more brutal deaths of dissenters and those who were just a bit too curious. The young Erwin eventually put 2 and 2 together, and he stopped asking too many uncomfortable questions in public. He realized that his failure to keep his theories to himself led directly to the death of his father. And this sense of guilt, combined with his natural curiosity, led to Erwin becoming obsessed with finding out the truth for himself and proving that his father had been right all along. When he learned that the truth was hidden inside Eren's basement, Erwin's obsession escalated to the point that he even admitted to Levi that he considered abandoning the fight for Shiganshina altogether, just so he could find out what was really in the basement before he died. Erwin was so committed to finding out the truth after all these years that he was considering abandoning the cause of saving humanity just so he could have his own peace of mind by finding out whether his theories were true. Erwin continuously defied death and led the scouts into battles against the Titans against all odds. But his obsession with fulfilling the dream that he shared with his father, his dream of finding out the truth, began to cloud his judgment, and he even admitted as much to Levi. Erwin became too willing to sacrifice anything, even his own men, in the pursuit of his childhood dream. Despite his amazing leadership abilities, his obsession with the basement eventually ate away at Erwin's own humanity. This is one of the reasons why Levi ultimately decided to save Armin instead of Erwin. The final decision was difficult and complicated, everything from the fact that Erwin didn't want the power to the fact that Armin was a strategic genius played into Levi's choice. It is true that Levi was closer and more loyal to Erwin, and it is also true that Armin could not hope to replace Erwin in terms of Erwin's leadership qualities and his abilities to inspire men to continue fighting against all odds. But while Erwin was certainly highly intelligent and while he made many wise military decisions, his dream of finding out the truth at all cost clouded his judgment. And many of Erwin's plans, like the charge against the Beast Titan, ultimately resulted in a lot of casualties. One could argue that these casualties were unavoidable under the circumstances, but the fact remains that in his plan to defeat the Colossal Titan, Armin was able to achieve the goal without sacrificing anyone else. Armin was willing to sacrifice himself, and he did almost die before Levi decided to save him instead of Erwin. But Armin's plan didn't require the sacrifice of anyone else, and even without heavy sacrifices, the plan succeeded and Bertolt was defeated. Finally, Levi made the decision that it was time for Erwin to rest and that he should not be forced to continue suffering in this cruel world. And so, Erwin Smith, the greatest leadership figure in the entire Attack on Titan series, died in the aftermath of the Battle of Shiganshina. But what was Erwin's legacy? How big was his impact on the wider story? And do his life and death have any meaning in the long term? I think that Erwin is one of the best characters in the entire story, precisely because he is such a contradictory and complex figure. On the one hand, Erwin is a brave and highly intelligent leader whose innovative strategy saved many lives. His ability to motivate his soldiers and command their loyalty and respect is truly impressive. And Erwin has made a massive contribution to the fight to save humanity behind the walls. On the other hand, Erwin is a deeply flawed human being. In his role as leader, Erwin has had to give up some of his own humanity, and he is driven by a childhood obsession which at times clouds his judgment and places the future of humanity in jeopardy. But do his flaws and his ruthless, calculating nature really make Erwin a human demon? I don't think so. In fact, I think that his flaws and his inner conflict make Erwin more human in the eyes of the reader and the viewer. In any war, leaders are forced to make many difficult decisions, and they are then forced to live with the consequences. We can all relate to Erwin's inner struggle, and we can also relate to the fact that he fell victim to an obsession. The guilt he felt over his father's untimely death led him to dedicate his life to finding out the truth and proving his father's theories. But like any obsession, this ultimately had a profound impact on Erwin's personality and on his decision making. As someone who is also curious and inquisitive by nature, I was frustrated when Erwin died before he could finally achieve his dream of learning the truth. But at the same time, I understand Levi's decision, and I think that Erwin's death cements his legacy. His contribution to the Survey Corps is undeniable, and despite his obsession with the truth, in the end Levi made the judgment that Erwin didn't want the serum and that he preferred to die alongside the men who sacrificed their lives for his plan. Even if that meant giving up on his lifelong dream of seeing the basement and learning the truth. Erwin's legacy is a tragic one. He died young after failing to achieve his dream. But without Erwin Smith, the Survey Corps never would have gotten as far as they did. Without Erwin, the soldiers would have given up on the fight to save humanity and retreated in fear a long time ago. Without Erwin, the old regime would still be ruling and oppressing the people while suppressing the truth. And without Erwin, the truth about the basement may never have been revealed. Even though he himself did not live to see it, Erwin was a key player in the Survey Corps finally learning the truth about what was happening beyond the walls. And it is this information that gave them a fighting chance against a previously completely unknown enemy. Erwin Smith reminds us that even a normal human being, as flawed and imperfect as they might be, can still achieve great things and motivate thousands of people, despite their own inner doubts and conflicts. And even if that person falls along the way, the impression that they left on others will stay with them, and Levi, Hanji, Armin, Mikasa, Eren, and all the others will continue to follow along the path that Erwin paved for them even after his death. Erwin's legacy is tragic, but it is also inspirational. Erwin was a hero to some, a ruthless demon to others, but in the end he was a complex, contradictory, and conflicted human being, just like the rest of us. And that is the tragic and heartbreaking beauty of Erwin Smith's life and legacy. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like Erwin as a character, and what do you think of his legacy? How much of an impact do you think that Erwin's life and death have had on the story, and can you relate to him despite his often large